All right. Well, again, welcome everyone who's joined this month's webinar, customer success webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. Over the next 20 or 30 minutes, we're going to be talking about AVAIL and talking about your experience with AVAIL and kind of how you can get started and get up to speed and kind of understand and kind of achieve the most value as early as possible with AVAIL. So we're going to be kind of touching on a couple of different aspects again over the next 20 or 30 minutes and kind of giving you just kind of the best foot forward on utilizing our system and some of the tools and features that we've got available. So before I move forward, I want to introduce myself. My name is Clay Watson. I'm the Director of Customer Success with AVAIL. Rob Snyder is also on the call or also on the webinar. He's our Customer Success Manager. And so we'll be here, following the webinar. Obviously, if you want to reach out and have additional questions or schedule consultations, we'll be kind of open to you all and be able to help in that regard. So as we kind of dive into it, looking at the agenda for this webinar, again, it's all about getting started. We are going to cover some core principles of AVAIL, some things that you really just need to understand about what AVAIL can do just initially. We're going to talk about a little bit of roles and permissions about delivering content through AVAIL, some questions that you need to ask yourself about your content, which are really important to get started. And then there'll be four specific steps that will actually kind of demo and kind of walk you through what that looks like in AVAIL around that content delivery, right? How do you take this platform and use it to distribute your content to your team and get projects or get your assets out to people that they can use in their projects. And then kind of expounding on that, we're going to talk a little bit about the automation that's built into AVAIL to help you get started, specifically around indexing content or adding content to AVAIL, around tagging content, which is really kind of what it's all about. Around searchability of that content is where you kind of want to emphasize your tagging. And then we're also going to talk about some new and improved training resources that we've got at your disposal. So this webinar is going to be great. We're going to touch on a lot of topics, but we do have some new and updated resources that you can take with you, that you've got with you in your platform, and that you can share with others as well, so they can kind of get up to speed and get the most out of AVAIL for themselves as well. All right, so to start things off, like I just mentioned, we're going to talk about some core principles of AVAIL. So in this webinar, I'm gonna be showing some examples of Revit content, right? That is one of the most relatable workflows that we've got. That's kind of our large customer base is around Revit users. So it's going to make a lot of sense to use that as an example, use that as a starting block. But AVAIL is larger than Revit content. So that is kind of what I want to emphasize here is that we are file type agnostic. So everything you see here on this slide and more, we support. So if you're looking at DWG files, if you're looking at PDF files, if you're looking at image files, whether it's PNG or JPEGs, Word documents, Excel documents, URLs, that is all supported through AVAIL and through our interface. So it's really about pulling, kind of understanding your content, the breadth of your content, all these different assets, wherever they live, understanding that AVAIL can be your central source of truth for all of that. And so, again, getting started, it makes a lot of sense. We're going to talk about Revit families. We're going to talk about your container files, how you can get those elements into AVAIL, because that's going to give you that kind of quick, immediate value and ways that people can start using AVAIL and kind of get the most out of it. But there is kind of the next step is kind of thinking about it in a larger context, understanding what else is out there that we could kind of bring together into one interface. So kind of moving off from that. So kind of mentioned there for file type agnostic. So understanding, as you have just started using AVAIL, maybe you're a first time user, maybe you've been handed this off to kind of manage within your team. We're going to talk about publishers and consumers. And so this is all about content delivery, right? So publishers are established as the ones who are going to be organizing the content in AVAIL. They're going to be indexing the content, which is basically our way, the drag and drop function to drop content into AVAIL or add it there. They're going to be tagging the content to make it searchable and make it easily consumable for end users. And then they'll be sharing that out with everyone on their team. So that's really important to understand that you've got that publisher access And then basically anybody else is going to be a consumer end user level. They're going to be accessing Avail to view and use the content that's been shared with them. So before we get started, we're going to jump into the platform. I'm actually going to show you some things here in just a second. But I kind of thinking about these three questions that you really want to ask yourself about your content and the state of your content when you first get started. So the first question right off the bat is, do I have content to index into Avail, right? You have this platform, but do you have content? Do you know where it is? Are you able to retrieve it to bring it into Avail? The answer can be yes or no. So one of the advantages, and again, I'm going to show this to you and exactly where this lives in Avail, is that we have a marketplace that is available for any plan. And so this is something that you can get out of the box content, whether it's Revit or visualization content. You've got a wide variety of things that you can subscribe to, and you can get that content without having to do really kind of any work. You just subscribe to it. It's going to appear in your homepage, and then you've got that ready to share with others as well. And then kind of on the flip side of that, if you do have content, where is that content? So that might be a really big question for a lot of folks on like where is all this stuff? It may be a really easy answer, but it's important to understand where it is, and that really kind of we're going to talk about this next principle here in a second, is that Avail kind of supports wherever it lives, whether that's a letter drive or a shared network drive or even a container file. We support anywhere that content lives, you can bring it into Avail. The third question is who has access to that content? So not just where it is, where it's located, but who has access. The idea about Avail is it can be a single user, right, using it on a daily basis, but it's really built for distribution, right? It's a way that you can get content, build that single source of truth, and then have it there for others to access and others to take advantage of. So it's important to understand that wherever it lives, if it's on a network drive or a container file, who has access to that stuff, because that access is going to be dependent on if they have access in Avail. So one thing that we definitely want to another core principle that we want to cover is that Avail is file location agnostic. So that means again, it can live on a Z drive, right? Ignite drive. It can live on a local drive, another shared network drive, but it has to be accessible by your end users, the people that are consuming this content. If not, they're not going to have that access in Avail. It's going to be blocked for them. All right, so we talked about file type agnostic, file location agnostic. We talked about those roles and permissions of delivering content, whether you're, excuse me, a publisher or a consumer. Now we're going to talk about the 4 steps that you need to understand to deliver that content. All right, so the first thing you're going to do, I'm going to review these steps first, and then we're actually going to walk through an example and kind of talk about what that looks like in the application. So the first thing is going to be to create your channels, which is kind of your first layer of organization for your content. The next is going to be indexing that content, so understanding where that content lives and then just using a drag and drop to bring that into Avail. And then you're going to be tagging the content. So during that, as you bring content in, you're going to be given an option to tag. I'm also going to highlight a little bit later on in the webinar some automation that's built in that you can utilize for some of that tagging. And then the fourth and final step, it's probably the most critical, is sharing that content with others, right? You can share it with individual users on your plan. You can share it with groups that you may have created, or you can share it with everyone on your plan. Those are all different options once you've got the content ready. So let me switch over to the actual platform. So if you're brand new to Avail, might be what you're kind of looking at, minus some of the channel groups that you might see at the very top. You might see our learning channel, you might see our publisher resources, and that might be it. So it can be kind of daunting to understand, where you're going to start. But if you kind of follow those 4 steps and understand those important kind of questions initially, I think you're going to be off to a really good start. So when you're looking at Avail, you've got, as a publisher, you do have this option to create a new channel. And so if you do click on this, you can really kind of want to think about, first, this is your first layer of organization. So what kind of content will you bringing in? In this example, we're going to talk about bringing in some Revit families. And then we'll also be looking at creating a channel for detailed library as well. So in some of these, you'll notice I've got some other channels here, and some of them look a little bit more appealing, at least visually, than the others. And so one thing I want to highlight is that's one of the big advantages of Avail is understanding that there's this visual component to searching through content. Instead of just File Explorer, you can have this interface in Avail that makes it really easy to browse and to search and to navigate through these groupings of content. So if you are brand new and you're like, hey, I want to kind of bring these channels to life, right? Instead of looking at, an empty channel card that you would see here, we've got some resources that are at your disposal through this Publisher Resources channel. And it's going to give you the option to basically kind of download this kind of visual graphic for your channel cards. And then you can just drag and drop and upload them to your channel. So I'll kind of show some of those off. If you're looking at channel cards, these are some of the ones that I've uploaded to some of my demo channels. And it's got a wide variety, right? So these you can kind of create yourself. We've had firms, kind of lean on and reach out to like their marketing or branding teams and say, hey, we're trying to introduce this new platform. We kind of want it to have a nice look and feel, a branded experience. And that's something that you can kind of take advantage of with Avail and kind of customizing some of these channel cards. So these are resources that are at your disposal. You can grab them, you can download them. They're all hosted in cloud. You would just click to download, and then you can drag and drop them into your channel. Once you kind of click on your details, you can drag and drop an image here. So I'll show you one that I've got for channel cards. Drop it here, and then it's going to be saved to that channel. What I mentioned earlier is the out-of-the-box channels. So as you kind of create your channels, don't forget that you do have these at your disposal as well. So when you're on the Avail homepage, in the upper left corner, you've got your marketplace that will load all of the out-of-the-box content that you can subscribe to. So as you kind of comb through, if you're looking at specific, imperial or metric Revit content, you could just select these, click on this subscription button, and these will be automatically added to your Avail homepage. And so those are the ways that you can quickly, again, if you don't have any content or you're just like don't want to get to a place where you're trying to search for the right content, you can grab this easily, and then it will refresh and be available on your homepage. All right, incredible. So once you've got your channels created, right? So we've got a couple of different for our Revit families. What I'm going to do is show you one that I've got content already added to, and just a quick view of what that looks like. So this is where I've kind of grabbed a couple of files just from an Ignite drive that we've got here for demo purposes, and I've dragged and dropped it into Avail, which is brought up. It's going to bring up that visual interface of all these different families. These are all kind of, you can generate a high-res preview on all of these by opening it up. You can see here, again, kind of in my screenshot before, you've got that location that is going to remain the same. It's not going to change once you bring it into AVAIL. That source location is kind of tethered to that piece of content forever, right? Unless it moves on that network drive or moves somewhere else, it'll always be kind of tethered to that location. Let me pull up an example of actually indexing content. So just to kind of show that specific flow and then the specific tagging component that's tied into the index flow. So I'm going to pull up just kind of an Imperial standards library, and I'm going to pull up, let's see. I'm just going to grab, as you can see here, I'm going to grab just some files here to begin this index flow. And so here, this is kind of this is going to be standard for any time you're bringing content into AVAIL with that drag and drop. You're going to get an option to select, depending on if you're grabbing a whole folder or just individual items. You can choose, which file types you actually want to be represented in AVAIL. So this makes the most sense. I just want those RFAs to show up. So I'm going to add that there. Next, you can add exclusion and inclusion filters. So these are ways that if you wanted to include, set these up and include specific files or folders, or maybe even more importantly, exclude certain files and folders, you can do that here. A lot of times this is going to be used for Revit backup files that may get stored. So we've got a specific key that you can actually enter into this exclusion filter. So it'll automatically not index those backup files, which can be super helpful. And then in the final stage of the index flow, you're going to be adding your tags. So this is something that as you're indexing, you can kind of create this and make it, it's kind of at your disposal to create these and customize these tags, but you always want to remember and think about how do you want people to find the content, right? So you want to be able to tag it in a way that brings that search, that kind of creates the best results for that search. So in AVAIL, we're looking at not only the file name, which can be very descriptive, it can be exactly what people are looking for, but as well as the tags that are attached to it that can bring that forward in a more realistic light. So this one, I'm just going to add a new tag just for the case of this demo. I'm going to click done. It's going to process that index. It's going to bring these things into my channel. And then it's also going to do a little bit of work around some of the tagging as well. And so that's the kind of the next point of emphasis that I'm going to talk about. It's kind of looking at the Revit tag generator. So this is something that is a part of the AVAIL program. It's a specific file that you can actually edit, and it's going to auto tag your Revit parameters, which is, generally speaking, it's a very helpful way to not only automate the tagging step, but also make things that much more searchable. So it's like these parameters make sense for searching, and a lot of times people are looking for these things as they're combing through AVAIL and getting what they need from the platform. So we'll take a look, and once this is done, this is going to refresh. It's going to refresh the channel. It's going to bring these things into my channel, which is great. It's added those two items. I think it was 343. Now I'm 345. And so as you can see here, anytime you bring in the content, you're going to see some of these tags, and some of these are going to be leaning on that Revit tag generator, which is a customizable auto tag file that you can kind of change and save on your machine. And so to touch on that again, you're actually going to go, it's the same location for all AVAIL users, is going to be this program data file. And I'll show you, I was going to pull this up on my end, actually show you what this looks like. So if you open this up in like Notepad, we got this open in Notepad++, but this is an editable file. And so it's something that you can go in. My specific file, you're going to see these as the kind of core standard Revit parameters that we kind of automatically have in this file, and it'll start to kind of pick up and tag your content this way. But you can also add any other parameter to this same file using this same kind of key structure. And so anytime I'm indexing Revit content, it's going to look for those parameters. It's going to have a key attributed to those, and also it's going to tag them based on the individual the parameters that you've set. So as you see here, this is kind of reflective in this filters option. You can see I've got my Omni class number, I've got my Omni class title, Revit category. Those kinds of things are all pulled in from that Revit tag generator. It's automating that. I didn't have to enter that into the system as I index the content. It was just bringing it in based on the metadata attached to the Revit file. So that's really, really important to understand as you get started, that there's a lot of automation that can be built in to some of this work, because it is a little bit of work to kind of get this up to speed and kind of get all this content organized. And so Avail, I think, has got multiple tools to kind of automate this for you all, and the Revit tag generator is a very important one to understand. All right, cool. So we've kind of walked through some of the examples of Revit families, right? So we talked about Revit families, getting them into a channel, creating that in Avail. The other side of that is kind of managing your container file content. So many of you may be managing container files, which is great. Avail supports container file management. That is where that should continue to live on as you're kind of managing those files. But there are a lot of constraints to container files. If you're not used to, if you're not, regularly interacting with them or navigating them, it's kind of difficult to find what you're kind of looking for. And so what Avail has is a tool called Harvest. And so this is with any paid plan, you've got the option for an Avail for Revit add-in. And so what that looks like is, I'm going to pull up in Revit right now. So here we've got just kind of this sample project that I've got open. I've got the project navigator, which is just very similar to what you would see in your Revit navigator. It gives you an option to filter or search on what's in your project, and then you can kind of bring things in from Avail to your navigator and into your project. And so it kind of talks back and forth with each other. But you also have, and again, publishers specifically have this harvest capability from the Avail for Revit add-in. And so what this does is that, it gives you the ability to take a container file and actually take all those elements or kind of export all those elements into Avail as individual representations of that content. So it's a very efficient way to bring content in without actually dragging and dropping. It's going to do this for you. And then it's going to do a lot of automation on the back end around the thumbnail virtualization, around full text search of your details. It's going to do that automatically, so that it's kind of some automatic tagging that goes on in the background. So as you're bringing in and harvesting your views, we're running OCR and AI components on your views so that they are full text searchable. So it doesn't mean you don't have to tag things a certain way as far as views are concerned. They're going to be automatically tagged on the back end, and then users can search, right, for any kind of keyword on that view. We'll walk through an example of that. One thing to understand about Harvest, again, this is only going to show up for publishers, the ones that are delivering content to your consumer users, your end users. And you'll always want to make sure that you're kind of taking a look at the specific settings for your harvest. And so this is one that I'm going to pull up for my detail library. And I'm going to save those settings right now just for future use. And that's going to be saved for your project. So anytime if I came back to the Stone and Towers project, it would save those settings and it would open up and you wouldn't have to kind of change your destination. But it is important to understand that you are going to choose that destination channel, where you're going to want these elements to appear in Avail. And then you're going to want to do a distribution location. So where is it actually going to live in your file system? So it needs to live in a specific place, and that's something that you can choose. You can browse to, and then save for that harvest process. Another automation that we've built into Harvest is this idea around related content. And so big picture related content is your way to bring assets that have an innate relationship together, right? Bring them closer together. So they may live in a lot of different places on your network. They may live in different places in Avail, but it's a way that you can kind of view them all in one place. Again, to expound on easier navigation and easy way to find exactly what you're looking for. So specifically with sheets, we've enabled this related content feature. And so anytime you harvest a sheet, you will, any element on that sheet, whether it's a view, a legend, or a schedule, it's going to get pulled together into a related content view for end users. So it's something that's kind of, again, another automation that's built in to bring content forward and bring it kind of closer together where it makes sense. So I'm going to save these settings. I'm going to pull out just a couple of views to run through. This is your option to kind of filter. You can search and pull up anything that's within your project to harvest. And this is a way that, checking these boxes is a way that you can just create your harvest queue. And you can always view this and see exactly what you're about to harvest. And then you can click run to complete that project. And it's going to do its processing. It's going to run through exactly what it needs to do as far as generating thumbnails, any of that related content work, all the OCR work on those drafting views is going to get done during that harvest process. But it's a way that you can just set it and let it run. And then it's going to kind of complete that whole index flow for you and present those elements into the channel that you chose. So looking at the big benefits of Harvest and really understanding how it affects your end users, there's kind of four different components, right? So you're kind of hitting a lot of value with different levels of users. So you're keeping your elements in your container file for easy maintenance. You're virtualizing elements so they're easier to find. Like again, a lot of that automatic tagging, a lot of the automatic related content that's happening. It makes those things easier to find and view. You're creating the high resolution images, which is also just super beneficial to get that type of view from Avail. And then you're kind of eliminating the need for Revit to be present to view content, right? So you're bringing this into, the whole reason is you're bringing this into Avail so that, no one has to have access to Revit in order to pull up these drafting views and actually look at these sheets and things like that. So they can actually be able to search and view content without Revit. All right, so taking a look at kind of a recap on what we've covered so far for getting started. So Avail is file type agnostic, but think beyond Revit, right? It's a great way to kind of it's easy to kind of focus in on Revit because it's a great starting block for a lot of different teams and firms. It makes the most sense, right? It's a lot of your users are using Revit. It's a complex program, and you kind of need some of this visual aid from Avail to help with some of those workflows. But it can be a lot bigger than that and something that you can kind of expound upon over time. Avail is also file location agnostic. So again, remember the source of those files, they live where they live. Avail does not impede on that. But they can, you want to make sure that people have access to those locations as you're sharing this out, as you're sharing channels with other users. You want to make sure they've got access to the same source that you have access to. You can use Harvest to unlock your container file, right? It's right now it might be a container file that is quote unquote like locked away, right? Some users can jump in there and find exactly what they need. other users, it may be more troublesome, it may be more challenging. So using Harvest is a way to kind of pull out those elements and present them a way that is easy for everyone to find exactly what they need to see. And then kind of finally, sharing and collaborating with others always produces the best experience, at least with our customers, right? It can be one individual using Avail, and that is fantastic. But as you start to share and collaborate on ways to organize your content, it's just going to create a more creative experience, and it's going to create just the best Avail experience. It's always better to kind of have more than one person kind of thinking about these things, thinking about the best workflows, but thinking about the best ways to organize content. So don't be, you may be limited in your resources, but I think it's always helpful to kind of reach out and understand, how you can collaborate with other departments, whether it's marketing to kind of create your channel cards, or maybe somebody that's internal that has a good sense of content management or organization to kind of help with this process to get up and running. Last but not least, I do want to highlight, I think we're kind of wrapping up the webinar right now. I kind of wanted to keep it between 20 and 30 minutes, but I do want to mention we've just released a kind of a revamped and relaunched learning channel directly in Avail. So let me switch over and show you exactly what that looks like. This is a channel that will come up with any new user. You're going to see this automatically. It's going to show up as a subscribed channel, but it is something that you can go to the marketplace and subscribe to as well. And so what we've done is kind of broken this out, similar to what we've gone over today, right? Getting started with Avail. What are the basics that you want to understand to really kind of get the most? And then we've also kind of broken out into another version of, or another kind of course of videos around publishers, right? The utilities and the tools that publishers have to deliver this content. So this is just a kind of starting block. Again, these are all kind of brand new videos. We've kind of updated the look and feel of all of this content, but it's really for your use, for you getting started, for you sharing with others to get started with Avail and understanding exactly kind of all the tools that can be collectively used to create the best experience. So we highly encourage you to check these out. They're also available on our YouTube page if you've ever visited there. But this is going to be something that continues to grow and continues to evolve so that you've got these resources, these training resources, onboarding resources. When new people come on board, for brand new users of Avail, you've got these things to kind of get up to speed and understand what's kind of right at your fingertips with Avail. All right, great. So what's next? If you still have questions about how or where to get started, Rob and I are both very available, right? We're kind of at your, we're kind of here to help, right? So email success@getavail.com if you want to kind of schedule, a quick overview of maybe your current setup, kind of where you want to take Avail. Maybe you're a longtime customer, maybe you're a first-time customer, and want maybe a refresh or a relaunch in a lot of ways. We're here to help. And we can provide some from context of what other firms have been doing on how they've set up Avail, different strategies there. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to assist you with getting started. I also want to mention two upcoming webinars. One, we are maybe moments away from launching an Avail for AutoCAD and Avail for Civil 3D add-in. So similar to what I showed you today in Revit, that harvesting capability, the project navigation capability, we will be having a product for AutoCAD and Civil 3D that does the same things with DWG files and block libraries. So those are imminent. Those are going to be launched very soon. So we are going to be hosting a webinar touching on those components specifically here in the next couple of weeks. And then at the end of September, we're going to be actually bringing in a couple of different Avail customers to talk about change management and what it means for a firm to adopt software, not just Avail, but just the challenge of change management. Maybe that's what you're encountering as well as you get started. Maybe this is kind of a new approach to content management that the firm has never really committed to, and you're trying to navigate those waters, which can be difficult. So we'll be hosting a webinar, again, bringing in two different customers to give their perspectives and their strategies on what they've done in the past and kind of what they've seen be most successful. So those are a couple of things to kind of look out for here in September. Awesome. Well, this concludes this webinar for Getting Started with AVAIL. Thank you so much for attending. We appreciate your time today. Again, reach out to success@getavail.com if you do have any questions, if you want to schedule a quick call to kind of review your current setup and talk about strategies. We'd love to kind of have those engagements. So feel free to reach out. Thank you all.